Ada's mornings always started with the sound of traffic. Not the kind that bothered her, she was used to it. The honking, the voices, the endless movement of the city had become her alarm clock. Every morning, she opened her window, took a deep breath, and said quietly, "One more day." When she first came to the city, Ada had dreams, bright ones. She wanted comfort, success, a life that looked beautiful from the outside. She worked in an office, earned little, and struggled to keep up. Then she met people who showed her an easier path. Men with power. Women with influence. They made it seem normal to take shortcuts. She told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong. Just surviving. But time exposed everything. What started as survival became habit. And what she thought was freedom became a quiet kind of prison. For years, Ada lived in that circle: parties, money, promises, guilt. She smiled for photos, laughed at things she didn't find funny, and tried to convince herself she was happy. But deep down, she was empty. Each night ended with silence that felt heavier than the day. One evening, a close friend disappeared without saying goodbye. No warning, no message. Just gone. And Ada began to feel like everything around her was fading too. The calls slowed down. The invitations stopped coming. The men who once promised her everything stopped picking up her calls. Her money ran out faster than she imagined. And the city that once looked golden suddenly looked gray. She would stand by her window, staring at the lights, asking herself what went wrong. But there was no one to answer. She sold some of her clothes to pay rent. Then her jewelry. Until one day, all she had left were memories and silence. That night, she lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, hungry but too tired to move. She whispered to herself, "I can't keep doing this." And for the first time, she meant it. The next morning, she left her apartment without makeup, without plans, without pride. She just wanted work, something honest. She walked around the city all day, asking at shops, offices, anywhere with a door. Everyone said the same thing: "We'll call you." No one did. By evening, she was standing outside a small bakery. The smell of bread was warm and real. A middle-aged man inside looked at her and said, "You need something?" Ada nodded. "I'm looking for work." He studied her for a moment and said, "Can you learn fast?" She nodded again. He handed her an apron and said, "Start tomorrow." And just like that, her new life began. Ada arrived early the next morning. The bakery smelled of sugar and yeast, and soft music played from a small radio in the corner. The owner showed her how to pack bread and clean the trays. Her hands trembled at first, she had never done this kind of work before. But she told herself, one step at a time. The pay was small, but it was hers. When she collected her first envelope at the end of the week, she held it like something sacred. It wasn't the money that mattered, it was the honesty behind it. She went home that night and cooked noodles with vegetables, humming quietly to herself. The meal tasted better than any expensive dinner she had ever eaten. Weeks turned into months. Ada grew used to waking before sunrise. The smell of baking bread became her comfort. Her body ached at the end of each day, but her mind was calm. The nights no longer felt heavy. There was a young man at the bakery named Daniel. He was gentle, always smiling, always helping others without being asked. He never asked Ada about her past, he just treated her like she belonged. They shared jokes during breaks and sometimes sat outside after closing time, drinking water and watching the city lights. One evening Daniel said, "You always stare at the lights. What are you thinking about?" Ada shrugged lightly. "Just life. How it changes." Daniel nodded. "It does. But sometimes, it changes for the better." Ada smiled. She didn't say much after that, but those words stayed with her. She began to notice the small things again, the laughter of children passing by, the taste of fresh bread, the way the morning sun hit the shop window. She started saving part of her salary, little by little, determined never to fall back. One Sunday afternoon, she cleaned her small apartment, opened all the windows, and played soft music. For the first time in years, she felt peace, not the kind that comes from money or comfort, but from knowing she was doing the right thing. Life went on quietly like that. Ada became one of the most trusted workers. The owner often said, if Ada is in charge, everything will be fine. She didn't seek praise, but she was proud of herself. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. A familiar voice called her name from the shop entrance. Ada turned and saw Lara. It had been almost 2 years. Lara still looked beautiful, but there was a tiredness in her eyes. She smiled awkwardly. You work here now? Ada nodded. Yes. It's been good to me. Lara looked around. You used to have everything, Ada. Why choose this? Ada wiped her hands on her apron. Because this time, what I have is mine. Lara didn't reply. She just gave a faint smile, ordered coffee, and left after a few minutes. As she walked away, Ada felt no anger, only calm acceptance. She whispered quietly, everyone has their journey. After that day, Ada began to think about the future differently. She realized that peace doesn't mean nothing happens, it means being steady when things do. She wanted to grow, not just survive. The bakery owner noticed her dedication and asked her to train new workers. At first, she doubted herself, but she accepted. She guided them with patience, never raising her voice. Some of them were young girls new to the city, eager, scared, and full of hope. She saw her younger self in them and silently prayed they wouldn't lose their way. Daniel remained a quiet presence by her side. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they just worked in silence. People at the bakery started to joke that Ada and Daniel were like brother and sister, always looking out for each other. Ada would smile at that and say nothing. One rainy evening, Daniel walked her home under his umbrella. They didn't talk much, just walked through puddles and streetlights. At her door, he said, "You've changed a lot since you came here." Ada smiled gently. "Maybe I've just started remembering who I was before the noise." Daniel nodded. "Keep remembering." When she went inside, she looked around her small but clean room. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She made tea, sat by the window, and watched the rain. The city lights reflected on the wet road below. She realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Months passed. The bakery grew busier, and Ada's life became stable. Then one day, the owner called everyone for a meeting. He announced he would open another branch and needed someone to manage it. To Ada's surprise, he chose her. She couldn't speak for a moment. "Sir, are you sure?" she asked softly. He smiled. "Yes. You've earned it." That night, Ada sat on her bed with the letter of promotion in her hands. She thought of her past, the choices, the losses, the faces that came and went. She wasn't running from them anymore. They were part of her story, but they no longer controlled her. The next morning, she stood in front of the mirror, tied her hair back, and whispered, "This is a new beginning." Months passed after Ada took charge of the new bakery branch. Every morning she unlocked the glass door before sunrise, turned on the warm lights, and set out trays of bread to rise. The smell of flour and sugar filled the air before the first customers arrived. It became her rhythm, her small piece of peace in a noisy world. People from nearby streets came often. They loved how calm the shop felt. Children stopped on their way to school to buy meat pies, old men came for tea. Ada greeted everyone the same way, with a simple smile and steady voice. She didn't talk much about herself, but people could feel the peace around her. Daniel still worked at the first branch. They saw each other on weekends, sharing tea and laughter. He would tell her how things were going there, and she would tell him about the new workers she was training. Their friendship had grown into something deep and quiet: trust, understanding, and respect. One Friday evening, as the sun was setting, Daniel came to her bakery. He waited until she finished counting the day's sales, then said, "Ada, I have news. I got an offer to study baking in another country." The owner helped arrange it. Ada froze for a moment. She was happy for him, but a small ache rose inside her. "When are you leaving?" she asked softly. "In 3 weeks," he said. They both fell silent for a while. Then Ada said, "You should go. You deserve it." Daniel smiled gently. "And you? What about you, Ada?" She looked out through the window. "I think I'll stay. There's still work to do here. The next weeks went by quickly. The bakery stayed busy, and Ada tried not to think too much. On Daniel's last day, the workers threw a small farewell party. Ada baked a special cake, simple but beautiful, and wrote "Safe Journey" on it with white icing. When everyone had gone home, Daniel stayed behind. He looked around the quiet shop and said, "When I first met you, you hardly spoke. Now you lead a whole team." Ada smiled faintly. "Life teaches fast when you listen." Daniel nodded. "Promise me something, don't stop dreaming." Ada met his eyes and said, "Only if you promise to come back and tell me your stories." They both laughed softly. Then Daniel handed her a small brown envelope. "Open it later," he said, and left. When Ada got home, she opened the envelope. Inside was a simple silver bracelet and a small note that said, "You taught me that peace is louder than noise. Never forget that." Ada held the bracelet in her palm for a long time, then wore it on her wrist. Weeks turned into months again. Daniel's messages came once in a while, photos of bread, stories of new recipes, short jokes that made her smile. Ada kept working, training new staff, and saving money. She learned how to manage suppliers, handle customers, and even fix small things around the shop. Each evening, she wrote a few lines in her old notebook, what she learned, what she felt, what she hoped. Then one quiet morning, an old woman came into the bakery. Her clothes were plain, her hair gray, her eyes tired. She looked at Ada and said softly, "My daughter, is it really you?" Ada froze. Her heart raced. It was her mother. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ada stepped forward and hugged her tightly. Tears filled her eyes. Her mother whispered, "I looked for you everywhere. When I heard there was a woman running a bakery here, I prayed it was you." Ada smiled through tears. "I'm here, Mama. I never left completely. I just needed to find myself again." They sat together in the small corner of the bakery. Ada brought her tea and bread. Her mother told her stories of home, of people asking about her, of forgiveness. Ada listened quietly. She realized that she had been waiting for this moment, not to erase the past, but to accept it fully. That evening, Ada closed the shop early and walked home with her mother. They talked about small things, the food, the weather, the stars above the city. Nothing dramatic, just peace between them. When they reached Ada's door, her mother said, "I'm proud of you. You've become strong." Ada held her hand and replied, "I just learned to start again." Years passed. Ada's bakery became one of the most trusted in the city. She hired more workers, taught young women how to bake, and helped them save money. She became a quiet mentor to many. People came to her not just for bread, but for advice, for calmness. Sometimes, when the sun was setting, she would sit outside her shop, a cup of tea in her hand, watching the street. Children laughed, people passed by, and life went on. She would touch the silver bracelet on her wrist and smile. Peace had not come suddenly, it had grown slowly, through mistakes, work, forgiveness, and time. One morning, she wrote in her notebook, "I once searched for happiness in the wrong places. Now I see that peace begins inside and spreads outward. I am not the same woman I was before. And that's okay." She closed the book, turned off the lights, and opened the bakery door to another day, steady, gentle, and full of life.